Hello and welcome back to the Dream Architect Life podcast. Brittany Anderson here with you today with a really cool guest, somebody who I had the great pleasure of meeting at a conference of all places. I was able to see this gentleman on stage. He was a masterful storyteller and somebody who has accomplished more than most people see as possible. So naturally, I thought he needs to be on the show. So, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce to you our guest today, David Perkins. David has served as CEO of Gondola Partners since co founding the firm in 2023. David has more than 3 decades of investment management experience and a proven history of building, operating, and leading innovative firms. In fact, in 1997, prior to co founding Hatteras, David co founded Cap Trust, one of the largest RIAs in the country, with over $850 billion in assets under advisement. As the co founder of Gondola, David's vision was to eliminate the many obstacles associated with implementing alternatives. Today, he continues his passion to challenge the status quo by creating performance focused alternative investment solutions designed to help advisors build more robust and resilient portfolios. Just for you listeners, David is somebody who is the epitome of what it takes to really grow and thrive and accomplish your biggest goals. So that's why we brought him here today. Now, on to the wonderful storytelling master, David Perkins. David, welcome to the show. It has been, this has been a long-awaited conversation. And I'm going to give a little context here that people may not realize is that David and I actually met. I was attending a conference for, independent wealth planning offices, for RIAs, we call them, up in Minneapolis. And this gentleman who is in front of me now was up on stage and is such an incredible storyteller. So David, first off, in your formal introduction, we went through and talked about just some of your amazing accolades. So we need to know the man behind the myth, the man behind the legend, I should say. So can you talk a little bit about your journey and kind of why you landed where you've landed today?
Well, I think people are motivated by two things, either inspiration or desperation. And I had a little bit of both. And I remember the conference that we had up in Minneapolis. I start all the conferences by saying the same thing, which I mean it at the bottom of my heart. September 23rd, 1985, had the best day of my life. I met my wife. And I tell you, I don't know why somebody like that would want to marry somebody like me, but she said yes, and I've been the beneficiary of that ever since. Let me tell you about what happened to me. Sheila and I are living in Charlotte, North Carolina. She's working as an interior designer, and I've got me a job working in sales in the trucking business. And lo and behold, Sheila and I, we decided we need to have a child. And we got down on our hands and knees and we prayed to God, God, please let us have a child. The reason we prayed is my wife had been in an accident when she was in high school, and they told her you'd never be able to have kids. Well, the Lord answered prayers. And we found out that Sheila was going to have a baby. We were blessed, but she got sick. And when she got sick, she had to drop out of work. Well, that created a problem. We were making $100,000 a year, spending 120, and she was making 60. I got a problem. I need to find a job to make $100,000 a year. So you know what I did, Brittany? I got down on my hands and knees and I prayed to God, God, please help me find a job where I can make 100,000. 2 weeks later, I walked into a bookstore, went to the back, picked up a book, and the book is called No Experience Necessary: How to Make $100,000 a Year as a Stockbroker. And I didn't have a whole lot of money. I was broke as a joke. So I bought the book anyway. I took it home. I told Sheila, I said, Sheila, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a stockbroker. She said, what did they do? I said, I don't know, but I know this. They make $100,000 a year. She said, that's the number we need. Well, back then, they didn't have the internet, so I got the yellow pages, and I looked up every brokerage firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I got interviews with almost all of them. But they all told me the same thing. People like you don't make it. You came from the wrong background, wrong clothes, wrong attitude, wrong school, wrong family, pretty much wrong everything. And it really, it hurt my feelings, but it put a chip on my shoulder that's still there. And finally, one group says, you know what, Perk, we'll hire you. You scored higher on this test than anybody else has scored. We're going to hire you. Come back on Monday. And I told Sheila, well, I got a job. She said, well, don't quit the other job yet until you actually got the paperwork done. Well, when I got there, everybody in the office had old long faces, and I didn't know what was going on. It was October the 19th, 1987, Black Monday. And the guy came out and said, man, we ain't hiring anybody. And it was Payne Weber, Greg Hollidge was his name. And he says, man, we can't hire anybody. I said, but if it went down a whole lot today, wouldn't it be great to be able to buy them low and be able to sell them high? Wouldn't it create an opportunity? He said, no, not so much. Well, from there, I lived for 3.5 years in a trailer. I was too embarrassed to tell anybody wasn't even mine. And I did become a stockbroker. And I started off at the wrong firm. I started off with a little penny stock brokerage firm because nobody else would hire me. And I figured out what they were doing, and I resigned, didn't even have a job. And one of the guys at the church, he said, well, you need to come down to Interstate Johnson Lane here in Raleigh. He said, I think they want to talk with somebody like you. Well, I interviewed them with them, went down and interviewed with the people in Charlotte. And I got back with our branch manager, and he said, look, those guys in Charlotte didn't like you a whole lot. You're pretty rough around the edges. And I said, yeah, pretty rough around the edges. In fact, I am. And I said, look, give me a chance. I know that you guys have a $2,000 a month training program. That would be all the money in the world for me right now. And I know it lasts for 2 years. Would you take a chance on a guy like me? He said, man, I can't. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you'll hire me, I'll change this whole office because I'll set the tone. And he said, no, we can't. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll take a chance on you. I'll give you 3 months of salary. And after that, buddy, you're on your own. Well, I knew it was going to be difficult. I just didn't know how difficult it was going to be. And now I'm in desperation. I was inspiration with my wife having a baby. Now I need some help. So I'm working as hard as I possibly can. And 2 months in a row, I brought home right at $300. And she was like, what is this for? So I had to put the lawnmower in the back of the car, and I went and cut grass at a bank and did some other things to try to just be able to put formula on the table. And the next month when I brought that $300 check home, my wife said, wow, I don't know how long I can keep telling these bill collectors that I'm a babysitter. They're figuring me out. So I didn't have but one job living out on the farm. I said it was a farm, it wasn't even mine. It was my father-in-law's. And I had one job. I got to take the hay out to the cows. On this particular day, it's raining. It's a little bit cold. And I got on that old Massey Ferguson 165 to get it started. And then went, and then all of a sudden it starts up. And when it starts up, all the oil that had set in the top of the manifold went out to the exhaust pipe, and it went spraying up in the air, and then it covered me. And I had one nice jacket. It was a down jacket. It's rust colored. And now that thing looks like a Dalmatian. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I go out to the pasture, and I'm taking the cows to hay, and I get off the tractor and I go into the muck. It's the stuff that you don't want to talk about. It's the water and the urine and manure, and it just went over top of my boot. And I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? I went back and put the tractor up, sit down on the back porch, my back steps, and I absolutely cried like a baby. I said, you know what? Those guys in Charlotte are right. People like me don't make it. I didn't come from the right family. I sure didn't go to the right school. I had to put myself through school. I went to a community college for 2 years, and I worked at UPS at night to be able to get through. But you know what, David Perkins, you ain't never going to have a Rolex watch, and never going to have a Porsche 911 Turbo and all that other stuff. But you don't have to live like this, and you can take care of your family. And you're right. So I walked in the back door. It'd been raining, so I thought Sheila didn't know I'd been crying. And I walked in, and she was holding my son, Brian. And she said, David Perkins, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know what you're thinking, but I know this. This little boy believes in you, and I do too. Now you go to work. I was like, whoa. I went to work that night. It was a Sunday afternoon. From that point forward, I was the first one there. I was the last one to leave. And I worked like nobody I've ever met in my entire life. It was a complete desperation. It was inspiration. I went to my office. I cleared everything out except a picture of my wife. And my little boy, and I told him, I will not let you down. And it didn't. And that was just inside of your heart. When you know your back's up against the wall, you get to figure out who you are. You either can be a winner or a loser. It's up to you. And, if it hadn't have been for God, I'm not sure I would have had the wherewithal but I turned everything over to him and said, listen, whatever it is you want me to do, I'm going to do it. And it's in your hands. And if it works, it's for you and because of you. And if it doesn't work, it wasn't because I didn't put in my part. And I hate to get emotional, but I mean, doggone it, when you've been through so much, it's just kind of hard not to be a little emotional. Well, with that, I had a guy in my office. He came by and he said, Perk, he said, you and I, we need to get together. I was like, yeah. I said, what are you thinking? Let me back step there. So somebody in my office put a Registered Rep magazine on my desk. And that Registered Rep magazine had $1 million producers. And I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. So I started telling people, what kind of production are you doing, Perk? I'm $1 million producer, just getting started. And so what I did is I called all those $1 million producers and I asked them, if you were a young guy with a family to feed, just getting started, what would you do? And they all told me exactly the same thing. We do investment consulting, investment policy statement, asset allocation, manager search and selection, quarterly performance reviews, sit down with a woman or a guy and tell them the truth. So I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. So this guy Fielding comes in my office and he said, that's what we ought to do. Investment consulting. I said, that's what these guys told me. So we started doing it and we started calling on retirement plans. And first year into it, we were about to starve even more than I thought we could. And we had like $30,000 in fees total, split two ways at a 30% payout. So we wasn't making anything. But at the end of that year, Field and I sat down in a conference room and we decided, you know what? We got to make this thing work. There's not a whole lot of other options. And I'll tell you what, some of you guys might know Fielding. That boy will answer the bell. And I wasn't going to let him down. He wasn't going to let me down. And man, we just went to work. And that company today is Cap Trust. And we started from scratch. And they got a lot of money under management and a lot of friends over there. I got a lot of great memories. Got a lot of success stories, got a lot of failures. And it was a great journey. And we had a heck of a ride.
David, I think that is number one, that's an incredible journey and an incredible story. And I would imagine for anybody listening in, number one, they're sitting there going, wow, how does somebody continue to persevere through so many ups and downs? And I mean, really, you had a clear vision for your future. And as I'm looking for the golden thread and everything that you just said, I mean, you held tight to your values, what you believed in, and really who you wanted to serve and what you wanted for your life and for your family. Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this. What is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today. Can you share, David, that That's a gift, I think. And there are people out there who struggle with just identifying the vision, getting clear on that value system. So, what would you say people can do to get very intentional with their lives, with their decisions? And what are some of the principles that maybe helped you to continue to persevere through those really difficult times?
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Officer and Gentleman, but Louis Gossett Jr., he's like an Army sergeant trainer. And he's got the actor, and the actor, the main character in the film. I can't remember his name, but he's going, "Come on, Mayo, quit, Mayo, just quit." And it's raining and it's in the mud, and he looks up at him. He says, "I can't quit. This is all I got."
Mm.
And I think if you get so fixed on something and that you determine this is what I want, um, you have to burn all the bridges. It has to either work or you die. And you have to have that kind of commitment. You can't have everything in your life, but you can have it all if you take time to figure out what it is. So I think to be successful, it takes four things. Number one, you got to determine what it is. What do you want to do? Number two, you got to put systems in place that are so great, Zip the Chimp couldn't mess it up. Next, you're going to have the discipline to do what needs to be done, even when you know you don't feel like it. And then lastly, you got to have passion. But if you determine what it is you want, you got systems in place, you've got the discipline to do what you know needs to be done, and then you have passion, man. But that discipline, many people know what, this is Anthony Robbins' thing. Many people know what to do. Not many people actually do it.
Yeah. I think there's so much truth to that. It's the taking action that I think delineates the people who, create success, and success by many different definitions. To your point, the having it all, it's defining what it is. And so we're not always talking about money on this podcast. Sometimes we're talking about the epitome of health, the epitome of purpose, the epitome of life experiences, and all that entails of legacy, and these multiple layers to truly building what we would define as a wealthy life. And I think there's so many definitions behind that.
Yeah.
The other thing here that I find fascinating about your journey is, Cap Trust manages what, $850 billion in assets under management. That requires some major leadership. And so I know we have quite a few business owners that tune into this, and people that, have created great success for themselves. So I would love to hear from you. What do you define as great leadership? What are those characteristics, and what has truly helped you to be a great leader over the years?
I'm not sure I am a great leader. I know some great leaders, but I'm not sure that I am a great leader. I think I think it gets down to what Dr. Jerry Bell talks about. And Dr. Bell, he has the Achievers Group over at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and he's a psychologist for CEOs. He's Michael Bloomberg's coach. He helped Michael Jordan. He worked with Jim Valvano. He's coached about 300,000 executives. And what he found out over time is that there's the law of three messages. And the three messages are, first of all, when you're talking, whether it's a prospect, a business associate, an existing client, your mom, your spouse, your children, they're asking themselves three questions. And the first question is, do you know what you're talking about? Are you smart? And every time you're talking, people are asking that question. The next one is, how smart are you? And how much conviction do you have? How much enthusiasm do you have around what you're talking about? And then lastly, it's how much do you care about me? And when you add all three of those things up, is it 60% one, 20% the other? When you add them all up, that's the message that you give off. And what's interesting is it's only 5% how smart you are. People don't care how smart you are. And the conviction that you've got, just because you've got enthusiasm, they say sales is the transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. I don't want to be sold on anything. I want people to help me. It's only 10% how much conviction you have. It's 85% how much do you care about me?
Mm.
So when you've got employees and you've got an open door policy, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. So what I think is, if you want to see me, let me know when you want to see me. Let me know how long we need to share together. Let me know what you want to talk about. But when you come in my office and we sit down, there is nothing short of death that's going to interrupt us, because I care about you. And sometimes you're talking with someone and you've got something really important that you want to say. There's the surface talk, level one. There's the beginning of the truth, level two. And level three is, here's the truth. And I want to get to the truth to find out what's really on your mind. It's hard for some people sometimes to bring that up, right?
Mm.
So here you are in a setting where they're wanting to talk with you about something, and now somebody's calling your phone, you're on the cell phone. That's zero respect. And
Yeah.
you ever been to a party and you're talking with someone, and the whole time you're talking with them, they're kind of looking over your shoulder so they can find somebody important to talk with? That really makes you feel great, doesn't it?
Yeah, not so much.
And I think a lot of times people confuse great leadership with great management. Leaders can set the vision and here's where we want to go, but a lot of times you need an integrator or a manager in your business to get there. And
Mm.
taking the time to understand that just because you're a good entrepreneur doesn't make you a good CEO, and having the courage to get a 360 analysis so people can tell you what's wrong with you. And if you don't know 50 things that are right about you and 50 things that are wrong about you, what your problems and your weaknesses are, how do you ever get better?
Mm.
And you got to acknowledge it. See, what's best about me? I might be the most intense person I've ever met. You know what the worst thing about me is? Same thing. And I can't cut it off. I can't.
It's funny because David, I have met some very intense people, and it's true, but that intensity, I mean, it can be your biggest blessing and your biggest curse. I've said before, I've been told a lot that I'm really, really kind, and I'm like, yeah, kindness is my strength and my weakness, right? Because you can have that serve you, and you can have it work against you too.
Yeah.
So, David, there's something interesting. And every time that we've interacted, you hold your wife and your family in such high regard. And, one thing that you made me think of as you're talking even about the vision and leadership and communication and what people are looking for and all these things is that sometimes as people are forging a path forward, they can, let's just say, be altered or hindered if their partner, be it a spouse, a business partner, or whatever, isn't on the same path or have a vision that kind of serves both of them. And sometimes that can hinder people from really pursuing what they want. So, David, one thing that's absolutely I respect about you and that I've noticed about you is that you hold your wife in such high regard, and you've also been able to accomplish so much. And I know you haven't done that by yourself, right? You've had great people around you and supporting you and all of that. So one of the things that we've noticed, so we have clients that, they want to accomplish and do great things and see great things and all of this. But one thing we consistently stress is that both partners come together and share their visions. And sometimes those visions aren't exactly the same. So I'm not asking for like a marriage counseling session by any means, but how do you, David, hold this vision? I mean, you are an innovator, you are a big thinker. And, I haven't met your wife before, but she sounds like an astounding woman because she also
Oh, yeah.
helps keep you very grounded.
Oh, yes, she
So
does.
So I would just love to hear, like, how do you pursue your vision? And what would you say to somebody that, either in a relationship and making sure that they're both just forging ahead together? I just think it's fascinating when asking this question of highly, highly successful people.
I think I've just been really, really lucky. And sometimes people do wake up on third base and it is a triple. And I think that's the way I feel about my wife. I've never seen her put herself first.
Mm.
So when you're living with somebody you've never seen them put their own self first, how do you compare to that? So I have to every day feel like I'm doing more than she's doing, and I don't want her to get too far out in front of me. And it's not about money. It's about how much do you care about me? are you doing things for me? And if she asks me to do something, I'm going to do it. And she has a clever way of doing it. She never tells me to do anything. She knows what it takes to get me to do something. Will you help me? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But in times of need, when you need it the most, she's been there for me. And I told her, I said, we're going to do really, really well, but we're going to have to suffer. And we're not going to have a new dress for church, and we're not going to have a new car. And it's for us to do this right, we're going to have to take some pain with it. My greatest quotes: the pain and sacrifice one endures today changes into faded memories overnight, but the accomplishments shape and change our lives forever. Socrates. That pain goes away. And you can have the pain of discipline. This is from Nick Saban. You can have the pain of discipline, or you can have the pain from the lack of discipline. And it's called, just being totally annihilated.
Yeah.
So I think that if you can share with each other what you're trying to accomplish, and know that you're not always right, and know when you're wrong. And sometimes, I get so mad with her. Like everybody, we have issues. One night we had a conversation that led to an argument, and I got aggravated, and I went for a walk. And it's probably about 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I'm walking around the neighborhood like an idiot. And my phone goes off, and it's her. And she says, you should listen to understand rather than to respond. And I thought, you know what? I know that. But I didn't want to listen. I just wanted to respond. So you're always growing. You're always trying to get better. And you always try to put the other person first. And it's not going to be perfect. But we both have a strong commitment to our marriage. And I'm just been really lucky. God's blessed me with a beautiful wife who's even more beautiful as a person.
Yeah, there's something to be said about having a strong support system around you. And it's amazing at what it can do. And, we've mentioned this on the podcast here before that, if nothing else, one of our goals, within Sweet Financial and one of the things that we love about different collaborators and people that we meet is when they hold that vision and, being able to put inspiration in front of people that may not have that support and may not have people around them that are constantly lifting them up. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we started this podcast, Brian Sweet and myself, is that we want to bring incredible stories and incredible people and help people see that, hey, you know what, you're not alone, and it's okay to pursue your vision of your dream life. So, David, I think, again, one of the things that I admire about you is your innovation and that there's always a next. I've known you for a very short period of time, but I can already see that you hit one major milestone and you're like, let's go. What's next? So I would love to hear, what are you excited about as you look into the future? What are you working on? What's got you going?
Yeah. My wife says I'm quixotic in that I have this endless romance for the next thing in dreams. And I know that I am. So I look, we built the company up. We got interested in alternative investments at Cap Trust. We put together a fund of funds. We built that up. Then 2009 came along and everybody wanted a liquid alternative. I thought that was a crazy thing. There's no such thing as oxymoron. And we didn't have one, so we went out and bought a company and built it from a couple $100 million to a couple of billion. Had a lot of people wanting to buy the company. I got to meet a great guy by the name of Glenn Youngkin at Carlisle, who's now the governor of Virginia. And I thought they were going to buy our company. And they didn't, because they didn't like my partner, and I wouldn't do it. And missed out on that opportunity. Sold the company to the wrong group. Made a little bit of money, bought it back, but what I bought back was a fraction of what it once was. But when I bought it back, before I did, I told Sheila I've been for a long, long walk down at the beach, and I sat down on the back porch with her and I said, "Babe, I know what I want to do." She said, "Well, tell me about it." I said, "Well, first of all, I can't stay here. I'm going to drive you and me both crazy." She said, "Probably right." I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Next, I got to have a place to go. I got to be around people who pull me up. I don't want to be around a bunch of yes people. And I got to do something that is significant. And I think there's two parts of life from the book. It's like the first part is being successful. That's, having a nice car and taking care of your family, going on some nice vacations, put them through college, yada, yada, yada. It's all about you. But the second phase, significance, that's about helping other people. And I told Shelly, I said, I want to help a lot of people. And she said, well, what do you know? I said, I don't know a whole lot, but I know a lot about alternative investments. And I've helped a lot of guys and girls become $1 million producers. So what can we bring to the table that they can't get down the street at a competitor? We can help people have a competitive edge. So in looking at that, I had bought a company here in town. It was a guy who had worked with me, a guy named Mike Lee. And Mike Lee is one of my best friends. He's been kind of like a son to me. And I met him when he was really, really young. And his work ethic is right there with mine. And we are joined like that. And he had left the company and started a third-party marketing group. And part of that third-party marketing group that we bought back from him, they had a fund called the Tax Lien Fund. And I looked into it and I was like, wait a minute. They've never had a down month. It's U.S. property tax lien. So in a tax lien, if you pay your taxes on your house, you're cool. Nothing's wrong. But if you don't pay it, they'll send you a delinquency notice. Then if you don't see it, they'll settle up with them. Then they'll put a lien on your property. Then they'll sell that lien to investors. And it's done through an auction. Once you have that, the money goes from that investor to the local municipality to pay for parks, schools, recreation, police, fire, libraries, that sort of thing. So I'm thinking, well, what happens if interest rates go up? It's insulated. It's not a market-driven interest rate. It's a statutory rate set up by the local municipalities. So if interest rates go up, it doesn't move. Interest rates go down, it doesn't happen. So like in Florida, the statutory rate's 18% plus a 5% penalty. Interest rates go up, it doesn't matter. So in 2021, the fund was up 11%. 22, it was up 11%. Last year, it was up 11%. It's just insulated from the market. And I said, man, I need to buy that thing. This is like awesome. And they wouldn't sell me the whole thing, but they sold us a 50% stake in it. And I'm excited about that. It's something different, has almost zero correlation to stocks and bonds. It hasn't had a down month. I'm not really sure how it would have a down month. And if the homeowner defaults, we set senior to the mortgage company. That's crazy.
Wow.
The other thing I'm really excited about, I'm putting together a credit card chargeback fund. And the kind of returns that you can get there are astronomical. The global credit card market's about $42.7 trillion a year, but only 0.06 are chargebacks, which are $256 billion. And my partner has visibility on 70% of those globally. And we've been working with this group. They've got about 400 employees to put together a fund that could give you access to credit card chargebacks. And it's not like bad debt collecting. These are just true chargebacks where if you are a merchant and you're getting chargebacks, you don't want chargebacks, because if you get too many of them, you get a negative score. And instead of paying 1 or 2% fee to Visa or MasterCard, it can go up to as much as like 10%. Or you can get put in Visa jail and they just stop letting you do business with them. So they want them to go away. So if we could buy them from them and recoup X%, we think the fund can do, somewhere in that 40 to 50% range.
Wow. Again, David, the definition of innovation and thinking outside of the box and, not just settling for the status quo. So, before I get to, my last question, if people are interested in learning more about what you do, about, your journey, anything across the board, how would they get in touch with your team, the company, you kind of open there?
Yeah, just email me directly, david.perkins@gondolapartners.com.
Awesome. Well, David, it is very clear that you are constantly looking ahead of the game and you have your eyes, I would argue, beyond the horizon. It's said that people have their eyes on the horizon and there's never that end, but I think you're constantly looking in the brief time that I've known you, kind of not just the next, but the next, and then the next beyond that. And I think that's something to really admire.
Thank
So
you.
I know you've shared kind of some of your journey and your history and what you're looking at and what you're bringing to the table to the advisor space, to investors across the board. What did I not ask you that I should have?
I think probably the most difficult things in people's lives are things that happen with their family when they get disappointed. And sometimes those things can be really heavy. And you gotta have God to be there with you. You gotta have a great partner. And sometimes life doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out. But that doesn't determine who you are. How you respond to bad things determines who you are. And if you're just going to get down and, oh, woe is me, and I owe a lot to Dr. Jason Selk. And Dr. Selk, he has this thing called RSF, Relentless Solution Focus. And here's how it works. And I'll go off on a little story. Selk talks about working with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's a sports psychologist. He said the guy's up at bat. It's eighth inning. Bases are loaded. Full count. He's in the batter's box. Shrike. He said, "Oh no, man, I got caught looking again. That's like the fourth time in the last 2 weeks. Man, I can't believe that. And my contract's up this year. Oh man, and I never should have got that second home. We got the third baby coming now. We got that new car. I'm not going to be able." And he calls it PCT, problem-centered thinking. And everybody does, and just going to death spiral. It's like when somebody cuts you off on the road, you just respond to them. You became them. And now the guy's out in the outfield. He knows he's supposed to be watching the pitcher. He knows he's supposed to watch the release of the ball. He knows he's supposed to be watching the batter. But what's he doing? Man, I can't believe I did that. That's the fourth time in the last 2 weeks. Oh no, contracts crack. Stand up double. Ball went over his head. Man, that's the fourth time that's happened in the last week. I wasn't paying attention. What am I? Crack. Ball goes over his head. Another stand up double. Runner scores. And what Selk says is this. He said, you can change that by being relentless solution focused. And all that is asking yourself this, what one thing can I do to make this better? Not to resolve it, not to make it go away. What one thing can I do to make it be better? Guy cuts you off on the road. Guy pulls up beside of me one time and he rolled his window down. He said, "Man, did you not see me back there? Blah, 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 blah." And I said, "You know what, friend? You do not have my permission to make me upset. Have a very nice day." I rolled my window back up and I drove home.
I'm gonna use that one at some point in time. Now, I used to live in Southern California, where the traffic is a heck of a lot different than Southern Minnesota. So I wish I would have been guarded with a quick quip like you just shared there back when I used to sit on the 91 freeway all the time. Now I just sit behind like a combine or something, and it is what it is. Well, David, I greatly appreciate you sharing your time. We know that time is the only commodity that we can't make more of. So I'm just so grateful for this conversation. I'm excited to see what you continue to bring to the table, and just truly thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Dream Architect Life podcast. If you liked what you heard from David Perkins today, be sure to share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe so that you're the first to know anytime a new episode drops. We'll catch you right back here next time. The opinions voiced in the Dream Architect Life podcast with Brian Sweet and Brittany Anderson are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on the show are not affiliated with CWM LLC Investment Advisory Services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.